Hello Wargamers, I'm here with the next part of the work in progress on Louen Leoncouer. So this time I'm going to show you the paint job I did on the base I prepared during the video that I presented before. So if you are interested in know how I did the base before doing the painting, please click on the box or in the link below on the comments. And let's start explaining how I paint this base. If you remember from my previous video, I used black to prime the whole base. And then on the stones, I applied quite dilute Charandon granite. So this is applied on all the stones and also on the earth parts of the base. Here another picture showing all the areas where I applied this color. So I start painting from the parts that are more hiding on the base, the deeper parts, and then I will finalize with the more superficial parts. So then, following this principle, I start doing a dry brush of Morphan brown on the earth or sand areas, as you can see in that picture. I don't care if I dirt the stones, because it's supposed that also the stones that are next to the ground or to the earth will be there by the sun or by the mud. So this is why I didn't care a lot if I dirt a little bit the stones that I put on top. And then I do a second dry brush on the ground areas with stout sep ochre. So here you have another picture of how it's looking like all these sand or earthy areas. And then I decide to do the rocks. The reason is I want to do a quite heavy dry brush, and this will dirtening a little bit all the surrounding areas. So to do that, I use Fortress Gray. I did a quite heavy dry brush of 40 grays on all the rocks and stones of the base. Here a picture from the other side, where you can see how all the cracks and slots and all the details on the rocks are very visible after this first dry brush. And this time I decided to do a second dry brush with a very light color that is Longbird Gray from the dry lineup of Games Workshop. So to do stones, I like to do this dry brush because it's giving quite a rough finishing that is matching very well with stones. And again, here you have a picture from the other side, so you can have an idea how the rocks are looking like after the second dry brush. And then I start to do the plants and the grass. For the grass, I use Dark Angels Green, and then for the grass or the small plant I put in one of the corners, I use Loren Forest. To do the grass, I dilute a lot the paint to be sure that it's covering well the grass, because if it's too dry, it will be very difficult to apply correctly. So it's good that you dilute the paint quite a lot, and you do 2 layers maybe. Also, I don't care if I dirt a little bit the surrounding areas. Here you have a closer picture after applying the green. So you see that I apply on all these areas next to the stones, and also the flock at the right is with lighter green. And here a picture from another side, so you can see how the paint job on the base is going on. Then I apply a dry brush of green camo on the dark green areas. I apply it quite dry, and I prefer to do several times on the grass to ensure that you see well the texture of the grass areas. Here a picture from another angle. Look like I also paint the grass that is below the damage shield on the top corner. On this small plant, I decided to apply Quid Khaki as a dry brush also to give a little bit more of texture and volume to the plant. Here you have a picture how the grass and the plant is looking like after applying the dry brush on the green. Then I paint the small plants that are climbing on the rocks with Louen forest. These plants have to be painted in detail. I want to have good definition and distinguish them correctly from the stone. So I use quite a fine brush to ensure that I only paint the plants and I don't mess up the rocks next to it. You have to be careful because there are some very small plants that after doing the dry brush are difficult to see, like this one that is not well focused in that picture. Arrived to that point, I decided to do Agvax Earthshade wash. I did that on the areas that are more rough on the rocks, and I also did on the slots and around the green areas. In that way, the plant have more contrast with the rock and will have better definition. So it will be easier to identify the two parts, the plant and the rocks. Here you have the picture from the other side. So look like I applied Agvax Earthshade on the slots and all the rough areas to give more texture to the rocks and also around the plant that is climbing this piece of stone. Arrived to that point, I start doing the small details that I add to the base, and I start with the shield. So in the case of the shield, I use Tauset ochre for the wood, and then I use iron breaker on the metallic areas. For the small symbol next to the shield, I use scab red. I want to paint this on red. And then for the small scaven symbol just behind this semi-arc, I use iron breaker as a metallic color. In the case of the skull, the scaven skull that I put there next to the rock, I will use a screaming skull as a base paint. Here another picture of the different details I paint in that area. In the case of the small bells that are also from the scavenge bits, I use brass from Model Color or Vallejo. And don't forget to paint the small tail of the rat that is hiding inside of the bell. And then I apply again Agvax Earthshade. So I wash with that color all the shield, this red symbol, the bells, and also the scavenge symbol that depend on the other side of the base. And on the skull, I prefer to use Seraphim Sepia because I think Agvax Earthshade is giving too much contrast. Here another picture after applying the washers. I was not very happy with the end result of the Agvax Earthshade on the bells, so for the chain were not well defined. So I decided to do a second wash using null oil. So it is a black wash, and the purpose is to give even more contrast on the chain. Here you have a picture from the top to see how after applying the washes on the details. I wanted to rust all the metallic parts to represent that they were not in well shape. Maybe the battle have happened some days ago, and we know that the equipment from the caverns are not in the best shape. So to do that, I use aged rust from Forge Wall, and to apply on the metallic, what I did is I mix this with a lot of water, and I do like a wash that I apply on all the metallic parts. Here you have another picture. So what you do is you take a little bit of this pigment and then you mix a lot with a lot of water to make like a white texture, and then I apply directly on the metallic part. I also apply this on the small Skaven symbol that I put on the front of the base. At that point, I start also painting the frog that I add to this base, and I start applying quick khaki all over the frog. Here we have another picture of the frog after applying quick khaki, and another view of the overall work on the base. After that, I apply Warstorm Glow on the frog, leaving the belly and the bottom part of the frog with the previous color. So I only apply this on the back of the frog and also on the back of the legs of the frog. Here another picture after applying the green on the frog. While the green that I put on the frog was drying up, I profit to apply by second time a screaming skull on the small scaven skull. The idea is to clean up a little bit the wash and give more volume to this small skull. And here we have a picture of how it's looking like at this stage. Continuing with the frog, I decide to apply Cordelia green shade as a wash. And then I clean the wash using Warstone, and finally I did wet blending of Warstone with putty green to give more volume and more texture to the skin of this small frog. As the wash was also applied at the bottom of the frog, I apply again quick khaki to clean the wash and have quite a clear color on the belly of this frog. I decide to use blood red for the eyes. And then I decide to use squeak orange on the hands and feet of this small frog. Here a picture of the frog at this point of the paint job. To do the pupils of the eyes, I used Abaddon black, and then I did a line from top to the bottom of the eye, making the line a little bit thicker in the middle. I decided to do a wash using Carroburg Crimson on the hands and feet of this small frog. While the wash that I applied on the frog was drying up, I decided to work on the other side of the base on this small scab in the tail that have been smashed on the battlefield. So I decided to highlight the edges and the rivets with blood red. Then I apply Abaddon black in some areas where I want to simulate that the paint on this symbol is chipping out. And after that I apply Iron Breaker on all these black spots that I create. Finally, I apply thin bits also in these spots to kill a little bit the brightness of the metallic and give a sensation of oxidation. I also wanted to highlight the small leaves of the plants using Louen Camo. Also from this side you can see this small plant now is much more visible with this touch with Louen Camo. I use Sybaric green on all the symbols that are on the bell. Here another close-up of after applying Sybaric green on these small symbols that are on the different bells. And this is a picture of how it's looking like at this stage. At this point the base is almost finished. Picture from the front, this is what the enemies will see when they fight this monster. At the end I decide to apply gloss varnish on the frog to give sensation that the frog is humid. And now the base is almost finished, but I wanted to do some small touches. So one of the things I did is I applied very dry and subtle touches of underhive hash on the stones. So if you see in that picture on the stone that is facing us at the bottom of the base have a little bit. I also apply a little bit of this dry brush on the other rocks, and you can see also in this arc or column that have fall down that also have applied a little bit. The idea is to give the sensation of lichens on these stones. Here another picture after applying the underhive hash to simulate lichens on the stones. I think in that picture the effect is quite visible. And to finalize, here you have the picture of the frog where I took the inspiration. So sometimes when I want to paint some parts, I just do a search on internet on pictures to have inspiration and to see how to look for different color schemes or different color combinations. So I hope you have enjoyed this part of the video. At this point the base for me is finished, and I will start working on the hippoglyph, and later on I will start working on the rider. Please comment or like if you like it. Thanks a lot for watching. See you again later. Bye.